Before we start, hit that like button, subscribe if you love elite women's basketball coverage, and drop a comment right now. Do you see Sarah Strong as the future of UConn? Because Geno Auriemma just said something that stopped the entire women's basketball world in its track. Not Paige Bueckers. Not Breanna Stewart. Not Diana Taurasi. Geno went all the way back to the very beginning. He compared Sarah Strong to Kerry Bascom, UConn's first ever All-American, the player who built the foundation before the championships, before the banners, before UConn became UConn. Think about that. When a coach with 11 national championships reaches back 30+ years to make a comparison, he's not talking hype. He's talking impact. He's talking basketball IQ. He's talking about a player who doesn't just fill the stat sheet, but controls the game without you even noticing. And that's exactly what Sarah Strong is doing right now. Tonight, we're breaking down why Geno made this comparison, what it tells us about Strong's ceiling, and why college basketball might be watching the next foundational UConn star rise in real time. So buckle up, because this isn't just a player comparison. This is a history lesson, and a warning. It starts with a name that most modern fans don't hear anymore. Not Taurasi. Not Stewart. Not Moore. A name from the very beginning, when UConn women's basketball was still fighting for relevance, still building its identity, still searching for proof that it belonged among the nation's elite. Kerry. When Geno Auriemma mentions her, he's not just reaching into the archives. He's reaching into the foundation. The first All-American. The player who made people look at UConn and say, something serious is happening in stores. So when Geno Auriemma looks at Sarah Strong and says, she reminds me of Kerry Bascom, it isn't casual. It isn't nostalgia. It's a statement loaded with meaning, about basketball IQ, about versatility, about the kind of player who quietly changes everything. To understand why that comparison matters, you have to go back to the late 1980s. UConn women's basketball was not a powerhouse. It wasn't a destination. Geno was young, learning, still building credibility. Recruiting was different then. Exposure was limited. There were no viral mixtapes, no social media hype machines. You had to see players in person. You had to trust your... And then came Bascom. She wasn't overwhelming physically. She didn't fit a perfect mold. What she had was feel, an understanding of the game that went beyond systems and plays. She could score, rebound, pass, and read the floor in ways that made teammates better. She played fast mentally, even when the game slowed. Bascom didn't just produce numbers. She gave the program belief. She gave Geno proof that his vision could work. She became the reference point, the standard for what a UConn player could be. Fast forward more than 3 decades. UConn is now the most dominant program in women's basketball history. Championships. Legends. Expectations that crush most players before they ever step on campus. And into that pressure cooker walks Sarah Strong. No dramatic entrance. No oversized ego. No obsession with attention. Just basketball. From the very beginning, Geno noticed something familiar. Not in how much she scored. Not in how many highlights she generated. But in how she processed the game. Sarah Strong sees plays before they happen. She understands spacing instinctively. She knows when to attack, when to defer, when to slow the game down. She doesn't force impact, she creates. That's what Geno sees. Just like Bascom, Strong didn't arrive looking like the future face of the sport. She arrived looking like someone who understood it. There's a moment Geno has referenced, watching Strong in practice, not even during a scoring drill, but in how she reacted when something went wrong. How she adjusted. How she communicated. How she absorbed coaching without resistance. That's rare. College basketball is full of talent. It's not full of thinkers. Strong's versatility is what makes the comparison feel so precise. She can rebound in traffic. She can bring the ball up under pressure. She can guard multiple positions. She can score when needed, but doesn't need to score to dominate. That's Bascom all over again. Back then, Bascom was ahead of her time. Positionless before the word existed. A player who didn't fit neatly into a box, but elevated everything around her. Now Strong is doing the same, only in an era that finally understands how valuable that is. The numbers don't scream for attention, but the impact does. UConn's offense flows differently when she's on the floor. Defensive possessions end sooner. Teammates play freer. Mistakes disappear. That's the invisible effect of a high IQ player. And Geno knows it when he sees it. That's why he didn't compare her to a modern star. He didn't say she's the next anyone from the championship era. He went back to the beginning, because players like Strong don't just win games. They shape culture. Bascom helped build the belief that UConn could be special. Strong represents the reminder of why it still is. In a time when basketball is louder than ever, more athletic, more explosive, more obsessed with individual branding, Sarah Strong plays the game the old way. The right way. The way that makes coaches smile and opponents quietly panic. She doesn't dominate the conversation. She dominates the detail. And that's why Geno Auriemma made the comparison. Because when you've coached as long as he has, when you've seen every version of greatness, the players who stay with you aren't always the ones who scored the most points. They're the ones who understood the game the deepest. Kerry Bascom did that when UConn needed a foundation. Sarah Strong is doing it now, when UConn needs continuity, proof that even as the game evolves, intelligence, versatility, and feel will always win. History doesn't repeat itself often at UConn. But sometimes, it runs. And Geno Auriemma hears it clearly. If you enjoyed this deep dive into UConn history and the future of the program, make sure you like the video, subscribe for more women's basketball stories, and drop a comment. Do you see the Bascom comparison in Sarah Strong too, or do you think she's carving out something entirely new? Either way, one thing is clear. UConn wasn't ready for Kerry Bascom back then, and the rest of college basketball might not be ready for Sarah Strong now. And when you really think about it, that's what makes Geno Auriemma's comparison so powerful. He didn't compare Sarah Strong to a champion. He compared her to a foundation. Kerry Bascom didn't just help UConn win games, she helped UConn become something. She proved that the vision was real. She set a standard before anyone was watching. Now, decades later, Sarah Strong is doing something very similar, not with noise, not with hype, but with feel, intelligence, and total control of the game. These are the players who age well. The players who win in March. The players coaches trust when everything is on the line. So here's the real question. Is Sarah Strong just another great UConn player? Or is she the next one who defines an era? Let me know what you think in the comments, smash that like button if you enjoyed this breakdown, and subscribe for more deep women's basketball stories you won't hear anywhere else. Because history doesn't always repeat itself at UConn. But sometimes, it shows up wearing a familiar